With the big news that the anniversary Ancients banner is now going to be a pick your own alongside the release of brand new hero Jezebel, this is a huge opportunity for players, and the question has very quickly become, who should you actually choose? And honestly, if you don't have Valara, then yes, she is absolutely the one you are going to want to pick. But this video is also about that really important second question, which is if you do have her, do you choose to go for Awakenings or do you choose someone new? Hi there and welcome to the channel. I'm Slate, and today I'm going to help you decide who to pick for the upcoming Ancient Anniversary banner. So first things first, why is Valara the go-to #1 pick? And it's simply because, to be completely honest, this hero is broken. She is part of the Tactician class that got released last year, and her ability is just insane. She's able to be both a platform and a ground unit. She has massive AoE damage, true damage. She is essentially meta in pretty much every area of the game. I really can't think of areas that you couldn't use Valara. There are definitely areas where other heroes shine slightly more in terms of their roles. I think you could sing your praises for Valara pretty much all day, every day. She does have a bond skill with WOULDN, who was last year's limited release. I would say that it is nice, but it is not necessary. It does reduce her deployment cost, and it does allow Rage to regenerate a little bit faster, which is very helpful, but isn't necessarily kit breaking, if that makes sense. And so that is why pretty much everyone will recommend that if you don't have Valara, she is your go-to pick. But the interesting thing comes when you do have Valara, and that is where you then start to go for Awakenings, because her Awakenings are incredibly strong and this is an opportunity to get them, or you go for another hero. So what I want to do very quickly is talk about why you may want to go for the Valara Awakenings, and then we're going to talk about the other options that you have and the value that some of these other heroes can bring to your account. So first up, her A1 is fantastic. I think it's the one that a lot of people recognize as the one that you want to try and get. A lot of A1s in this game are actually very powerful, and that is because essentially she is able to inflict this Radiant Erosion, and Radiant Erosion is an Arbiter exclusive debuff, which essentially deals continuous true damage. It is very, very strong because what she is able to do with that is essentially ignore 25% of their magic resistance if she is attacking enemies with Radiant Erosion, and also just by being within her attack range, enemies are going to get a stack of Radiant Erosion. So essentially she is bringing her own special debuff to the table. Her A2, 5% attack, very nice. And her A3 is really nice, particularly in GVG, because that is essentially able to block damage, which can keep her alive. And also it has a damage reduction for herself. It's one of those Awakenings that is very strong in GVG specifically. Penetration plus 8% at A4 is again very nice. And then finally the A5 is it increases 20% damage to targets inflicted with slow and CC effects, which we really only see on cultist units having that boost to the CC. And yet Valara is able to bring in CC in her own kit. She has slows. And so essentially by the time that you've got the A5, you are not only ignoring 25% of their magic resistance, dealing true damage, you are also dealing 20% more damage with the hero, like to the enemies within your range that you're inflicting so on. And that is why she is, you know, considered absolutely correct. So of course, these are very, very strong Awakenings. However, sometimes a new hero can do more for your account than necessarily making your best hero better. And that's because in this game, it is a team game and you are going to need to bring in other heroes in order to play a lot of content, not just one. And so we are going to move on to this handy dandy tier list, and we are going to talk through some of these different categories. First up, it is going to obviously be Valara in her Valara category, and like we said, we've already talked about her. Now obviously the Arbiter and Chaotic factions are Ancient exclusive, but not all heroes that have Arbiter or Chaotic factions are available in the Ancient Summoning Pool, if that makes sense. Now, the other thing I want to really quickly skim over are the past heroes. These are heroes that I wouldn't necessarily recommend. If you want to do it just for the collector bonus, absolutely. And I'm also not saying that all of these heroes are terrible and don't have their uses. I just wouldn't necessarily use this opportunity to pick them up. Unless, of course, there is one that you have been missing, you know, for example, Lubu. So, you know, you do you, boo. And just before we move on to the strong picks, if you are planning to spend this anniversary, any other time, please consider using one of my exclusive links with Codashop or Smile1 in the description below. It doesn't cost you anything extra. It's just a way to support me as a creator, and purchases through the external links are 10% cheaper than if you buy in game. So yeah, thank you so much if you choose to use my links. And back to the tier list. And now we have what I would consider the strong picks. These are the ones that if you do have Valara, you may want to pick up, and we're going to go through them in a little bit more detail as to why you might want to pick them up. There are definitely what I'd call stronger choices than others within this bracket. So again, it is going to be very much account specific. But starting off with Ardea, she is a long-range normal fighter. She's one of the most OG heroes in this game and just hits like a truck. There is no other way to put it. She's one of those heroes that has constantly gone in and out of the meta, whether that is in GVG, whether that's in other parts of PvE. Places where she shines today in late game content is going to be Malrix and Matrix. She's also very good in Gear Raid 1. She can be very helpful in, and yeah, she's just a very solid little fighter. She's also one of the heroes that has eluded my account for so long, so I may consider going for her, but there are a few others that I am considering as well. Next up, we have Carnelian, who is probably one of the most unique heroes in the game in the fact that she has these red orbs, which she puts onto the allies on the field when they're in range. They can sort of bounce outside her range, and it's essentially a death save. She's amazing in boss content, such as APOC, for doing effectively unkillable teams to help you really push through. She's great in other areas of the game. Here, Dungeon 2, for example, there are some cheese strats with her. She's just one of those amazingly unique heroes that is just great, essentially. And if you don't have her on your account, it's one of those things that you do notice and you get very excited about when you do. I will say this, though, she is one of the heroes that seems to get a lot of banners, and I can think off the top of my head at least twice in the last year that she's had a banner. So it's one of those characters where because she gets picked, you may decide to wait for a time when her banner actually comes around naturally. But speaking of banners, Dassomi, who is next on the list, I don't think has ever had a banner. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but as in my memory, I don't think we ever have had one. And Dassomi is a really interesting hero in the fact that as the game has progressed, again, he is one of these OG heroes, he has actually just got better and better. He did get buffed, and I do think that that helps, but essentially he is able to do quite a few things. First, he's able to dispel debuffs very easily to the point where I do have a video of an APOC to 120k team that is on full auto thanks to this guy. He's great in Malrix. He also is able to do a low amount of constant inspiration, which again is incredibly helpful. He's one of those heroes that's quite quiet on your account that you're like, oh, I'll just bring in a Dassomi, rather than necessarily someone like an Erlis who gets hyped for their support, if that makes any sense. But yeah, I think Dassomi is very solid. And like I said, he hasn't really ever had a banner. So this might be the time that you pick him up. Next up is Durza, and Durza is a really interesting hero in the fact that he used to be considered one of the absolute worst heroes in the game alongside Giselle. You did not want to see his video come up. He does have a really cool video. It is a very cool cinematic. So yeah, anyway, you didn't want to see that, but actually he got buffed and the buff has been fantastic. And what does this guy now do? He is one of the best supports for late game content when you are running chaotic units. And that is because he's able to do both physical and magic reduction. He's able to do an attack speed increase. He also has an inspiration in his kit, and he is able to inflict vulnerabilities onto the team. So essentially he does pretty much everything. The main downside to him is that he will drain your heroes, and so in certain content that can kill your allies and that can be a little bit tricky. So again, there is a reason why he's not considered the best in the entire game, but he is definitely great in this game. The other thing is that he does bring in CC in the fact that his basic attack is able to inflict slow, and slow is one of the few CC debuffs in this game that actually seems to work even when the mobs say immune to CC effects. Next, we have Erlang. Erlang is interesting for a couple of reasons. Firstly, he has a bond skill with Nezha. Now, Nezha is one of the best normal pool heroes in the fact that, again, he is just able to do everything. And by obtaining Erlang, what that means is that he is able to become immune to all debuffs and restore his own HP during his ultimate, which is really nice for certain content. Again, I wouldn't necessarily say that you have to try and pick up an Erlang for your Nezha. Now, in terms of what Nezha does for Erlang, essentially what that is going to do is effectively increase this opportunity for Heaven's Gaze, which is Erlang's unique debuff. Now, the interesting thing with Erlang is he is a defender, but you can build him as a DPS. So he's very good in boss content, for example, Abyss. He was part of my 60k team because he is able to inflict this Heaven's Gaze, which does both 10% physical and magic vulnerabilities. It cannot be dispelled. He also puts out Radiant Erosion, but you can basically use him as a tank or as a DPS. And so he's quite nice in the Gear Dungeon 3 as well. He's again one of those heroes that you will see crop up in teams because of what he's able to do. And I've also seen him pop up in some arena teams as well. And next we have a hero which I would say is a very strong recommendation if you already have Valara, and that is Gretchen. Gretchen is one of those heroes that has really surprised me, and I think a lot of the community since her release, in the fact that she seems to just be getting better and better. And the more content that has come out, the more content she has shone in. And it's one of those heroes that is very interesting in the fact that she is a combination of both a DPS and a support hero, in the fact that she is able to help her teammates regenerate rage. She also has a thing with crit damage, I believe, in her kit. Yes, here. And so, yeah, her kit is very interesting. Now, in terms of her awakenings, she isn't really used in PvP apart from when you get to A3, which is where I think she has started to use some GVG. And I have seen some teams use her in Arena as well. But essentially, she's just a really good unit that seems to be able to do a lot of different things, especially in boss content. And the more content that has come out, the more Gretchen teams that we are starting to see. So yeah, definitely a very strong contender if you have already got Valara and you don't have a Gretchen. Speaking of strong contenders, the next one that we're going to talk about is a Khadgrim. Now, Khadgrim's kind of known as the best tank in the game, and I do believe that that's true in terms of pure tankiness. The only thing I would say is that if you are in PvP, Khadgrim is nearly a must for competitive GVG. He is just an absolute unit of a tank and very, very hard to kill. It's why the earliest Khadgrim teams are some of the most toxic that we have ever seen, and that is because this guy is amazing. Now, if you are not that heavily into GVG, I do not think you necessarily have to try and get a Khadgrim. I think the hype around him is very PvP focused because of how good he is there. And the reality is, in a lot of content, we don't use very strong tanks. I mean, Olag for most content for PvE is going to get you there, and that is an epic in terms of needing to tank against mobs. Or what is we are now seeing in a lot of boss content or different things is we are starting to see other heroes such as fighters, such as heroes like Draylen, who can bring in healing and boosts and stuff like that. They seem to be the ones that you actually tend to use more in PvE. So Khadgrim is your absolute unit of a tank in PvP. If that is your focus, do consider picking him up. But if you are much more on the PvE side, he is less of a high priority. So the interesting thing with Leikan is that he is a solid unit. He is not what I would call a game-breaking unit like a Valara, but ever since Orin came out, you are going to start to see him cropping up in things like the top Matrix teams. 1 second, let's pull it up. On the world rankings, you are starting to see A5, A3, A2, A0 Leikans, and that is because he is going to be part of these Orin teams. And so, yeah, I definitely think if you have an Orin and you don't have a Leikan and you're trying to push Matrix, that is a very good consideration of why you might want to get a Leikan. Now, it does say ally buff in here. He has this weird thing where he can like force people off the board, which is a little bit odd. I'm not really sure where any content is currently in the game where that is necessary. But who knows? It might become necessary in the future. Absolutely have no ideas. But yeah, essentially, if you have Orin, you want to push Matrix, you might want to consider picking up Leikan. Next is Sergei. Sergei, again, is one of those heroes that wasn't very hyped on release, but when people have got their hands on him and started to play with him, he is very exciting in different content. Mainly Arena is where I sort of see him, but actually he's started to show up in some Abyss teams because he's, again, one of those few heroes who's able to survive the meteoric deluge, and that is because of this passive where he is able to, when taking fatal damage during his ultimate, consume his stacks of chi in order to negate it. So again, he's one of those few heroes. Now obviously Kagiri, King of Abyss, Kagiri is a limited hero, and so he is not easily available, and so you can either wait to try and get a Kagiri, or you could consider picking up a Sergei. It really depends on what your priority is. But yeah, he is a solid little single target damage dealer with some funky stuff in his kit. And finally, we have the latest tactician release, and that is Suya. And Suya is very interesting in the fact that she's the first hero that has limited deployment. You are only allowed to put her down 4 times per battle. It's her awakening. I think it is a 5. Yes, where that can go up to 5 times. But essentially, she hits like an absolute truck when she is deployed. And that has made her meta in the Immortal Codex. And I'm interested to see if other content comes out where this is important, because she is essentially able to be dropped down, wipe everything out and then get put somewhere else on the board. She also has debuff immunity, which we are starting to see in a few of these newer heroes. And that sort of makes me a little bit skeptical, a little bit suspicious that there may be more debuffs coming to the game. That is pure speculation. I do want to just say that right now, but it's one of those things that I've started to see crop up in kits, and it does make me go, interesting. So yeah, definitely interesting. She also has a bond skill with Gushi, and Gushi is probably now the best marksman in the game. Hands down, has thrown Silas off his throne for single target, like, marksman oofiness. Like, I literally cannot believe how much damage Gushi can do. And essentially what it is able to do is that if you have Suya, means during his Karma Incarnate, which is his ultimate, each basic attack has a 20% chance to deal an extra damage. So again, this is really nice. It's not game breaking. It's not a reason I would necessarily pick Suya for the bond skill, but it is definitely a really nice bond skill to have. And so yeah, because each of these heroes that I've just talked about bring something else to the table, a lot of them have very unique kits. That is where I say it might sometimes be better for your account to pick one of these heroes rather than go for the very strong Valara Awakenings, because in my personal opinion, I think having a very diverse roster lets you tackle content, especially new content that comes into the game. And now that we have things like Unpolished Soulstones, it is a little bit easier to get those awakenings. And yeah, I've definitely changed my mind in recent months about when to use unpolished and polished soulstones, so I might make a video on that soon. Do let me know in the comments below if that's something you'd be interested in. So essentially the TLDR version is that if you don't have Valara, pick Valara. If you do have Valara, consider getting one of the strong picks if you don't have them. And I would say the priority, in my opinion, to get is going to be Gretchen if you are interested in every aspect of the game. It is going to be Khadgrim if you are very into GVG and don't have him yet. And then we have Dassomi, Durza, and Carnelian for their unique support. I would place Dassomi and Durza slightly above Carnelian because they pop up in a lot more teams these days. Ardea is just a classic in what she is able to do. Erlang, Leikan, Sergei, and Suya are much more niche in what they are able to do, but they are very strong. And of course, like I said, if you are missing a hero from the past collection and you want them, you go get them. And of course, if you need help deciding for your individual accounts, do head over to my Discord community. We have a who to pick banner chat where myself and others are usually there to help you decide what is going to be best for your account. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. I am really excited about this event. And at the moment, I am trying to decide between Ardea, Gretchen, maybe Sergei. I'm not sure, but they're the sort of ones in my mind. Maybe Khadgrim as well. I still technically do GVG. But yeah, anyway, that is going to be everything from me today. Do like, subscribe if you haven't already. I look forward to seeing you in the next video and the next live stream. So until then, take care and bye for now.